Welcome to Bookshopaholics, our series of occasional episodes here at the Book Club Review podcast, where we get to indulge in our love of independent bookshops and meet the owners of some of our favourites. I'm Kate, and today I'm in the old market town of St Albans, about an hour's drive north of London, notable for its ancient Roman ruins, beautiful cathedral, and also for being my old hometown. One change since I left is the addition of a new bookshop called Books on the Hill that feels as if it was always there. The hill in question is called Holywell Hill, named after the holy well that supposedly sprang up after Alban was executed by Roman soldiers back in the 3rd or 4th centuries. Legend has it that it was at this place that Alban's head was struck off. Immediately after one of the executioners delivered the fatal stroke, his eyes fell out and dropped to the ground alongside Alban's head. Later versions of the tale say that Alban's head rolled downhill and that a well gushed up where it stopped. Today the road is busy with a very modern stream of traffic taking people into the town centre, but nestled to one side is the bookshop. Let's go in and take a look around. Coming in, we leave the traffic of the hill behind. The creaking door announces our arrival, and we come into a beautiful room with a large round table, invitingly displaying all the latest books. This feels like a table where the edit changes quite regularly, so it's always something where you're going to come and have a look and not know quite what you're going to find. All around the walls we've got dark green bookshelves full of books inviting you to pick them up. And under a clock we've got the Bookseller Recommends section, a book called The Volcano Lover by Susan Sontag. It says, "We know Susan Sontag as a non-fiction writer, but her fiction is certainly worth reading. She takes an interesting angle on life in all its various slants, complex and passionate." And then there's a wonderful cabinet called the Curiosity Cabinet, which has old first editions in beautiful condition with those glorious covers that make those old books so special. I can see a lovely first edition of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory there by Roald Dahl. You Only Live Twice by Ian Fleming, first edition, first printed from 1964, and that is £1,200. And then going up into the back section of the shop, past lots of lovely stationery and a small poetry section, you come to the older books section. Just those lovely old books that you sort of feel you might find on your grandparents' bookshelves with beautiful bindings. And these are arranged by colour. And then a children's section, which has a lovely inviting carpet to sit down on, and picture books all face out, and a height chart for children to work out how tall they are. And the different heights are marked out according to characters in books. So down at the bottom there's Piglet, and then it goes up to Winnie the Pooh, Tigger, Kanga, then you might get up to the height of Bilbo Baggins. If you keep growing, you'll be at the height of Paddington, then Christopher Robin, and all the way up to Anne of Green Gables. I think I'm at the height of Tintin, and Katniss Everdeen is a bit taller than me, as is Professor McGonagall, Legolas, Albus Dumbledore, and right up the top we've got the White Witch, Narnia. At the very top, Frankenstein's monster, and at the very, very top of the tree, Hagrid. All right, let's go and talk to Antonia and find out more about this very special shop.
I run the shop with my mum, Claire. The shop came about as a dream on holiday, as my mum had the chance to buy a bookshop in Foy in Cornwall and asked me to move. And I refused because my life is in Hertfordshire. So we decided to look a bit closer to home, and she found this amazing space that we did actually lose for a split second for a month as we were in competition. But luckily we won it, and we've opened this bookshop. My mum has the most incredible passion for books. She's a real avid reader, wonderful interior designer. She's chosen all the colour scheme. And I've come in as a helpful role in terms of management, in terms of helping with the team, doing events, interviewing for events. And it's come to be what it is now, which is this wonderful curation of books and a wonderful team that helps support us.
I would never imagine for a second that it's easy launching a new bookshop, but you had the extra challenge in that lockdown and the pandemic happened just after you opened.
Yeah.
How did you manage to weather that?
We opened November 2019, so that was 4 months before the initial lockdown. We opened our doors but had no website. I'm the most technologically incompetent person you'll ever meet, so trying to build a website was a very new venture. There's so much to learn. We always remind ourselves we can't read everything, but we can try. And it's incredible because that's where you really use your team. So we've not only got booksellers, we've got book researchers, we've got volunteers. We have such an amalgamation of knowledge between us all. It was very much hard work, but very rewarding work as well, as you found, especially in lockdown, many people going through the hardest of times, mentally, physically, spiritually, and being able to offer them something that gave them that escapism and that solace from the big bad world. We always say we're here for our community, and our community have certainly been here for us. You come into a bookshop setting and you can be that friendly ear to find them something just to improve their day or their week, or in some cases change their lives, which is incredible.
There is a Waterstones here in St Albans. When you launched Books on the Hill, were you conscious of needing to offer something different to that? Was that a concern, worrying about how you were going to compete?
Not at all, because we don't compete. We're here as a different venture. We offer a very different service. We're more of a personal service. We do lots of personal shopping experiences, subscriptions. We do our research, we take the time, and we all have our different niches. So for myself in particular, I did an archaeology master's, so history and anything to do with Rome and Britain, I adore. I've got a bookseller, Katie, who adores crime and researches crime to the next level. So we've got Japanese crime writers in. My mum adores the classic works and has such a wealth of knowledge around that. All our booksellers bring something new to the table, which does make you special, and something different on the high street.
You have more than one book club that you run. You've got different ones happening at different times of day and doing different things.
We run 3 different book clubs. Our first is our breakfast book club. It's an hour on a Sunday morning, and we'd sit down in our cafe and our reading rooms and just talk about any books that we've adored. It's a safe space, so if you've not adored a book, you can still talk about it. We've had plenty of great heated discussions. It's just a place where if you have fallen out of love with reading, or you're new to the city and want to meet people, it's a great way of getting in and meeting those that are like-minded. Our age ranges have gone from about 17 all the way up to 84, so it's a very diverse group. Our book club after hours follows the same suit, but it takes place in the evening, and we always say you can bring your own alcohol. Our third one of the month, again, it's on the Sunday. It's around a set text, so each month our booksellers are given a theme. For June, it is history, for which we're doing The Language of Food by Anna Abbs. It's a wonderful exploration of feminism and women in the publishing industry, and just a great way of seeing what women were allowed to publish back in the day and what they can do now. And it's a wonderful, wonderful book. Each month's different. The book clubs, we always say, are a wonderful source of escapism. If you want to feel like you've achieved something before 11 o'clock on a Sunday, come to a book club. It's a wonderful way to start your day.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely fantastic. I was thinking as you were talking, it sounds a bit like the way I feel if I ever manage to get my act together and go and do a park run. And then by 9:30, you've run 5K, you feel incredible, you set yourself up for the rest of the day. But how brilliant to go and talk about books and have that same shot in the arm of energy. Oh, I love that idea. So great.
And it's such an investment in yourself as well. I feel like a lot of people feel you have to spend money in order to invest in yourself so heavily. So whereas you go on a spa treatment or a holiday or retail therapy, a book club, you're investing in your own self, your own knowledge, taking that time to calm as well. And it's a pleasurable experience. It's not like at school where you were forced to talk about a book. A lot of our book clubs, we do get new attendees who don't talk. They just want to sit there and take it all in. And that's absolutely fine. There's no pressure. You can choose which months you come to. You're not locked in for the whole year. So it gives people that space because real life gets in the way.
And with the regular monthly book club where you do choose a set book to read, have there been any that have been particular standouts in your mind, ones where you think, wow, that was such a great book club book?
Well, for me, in March we had the theme of nature, and it was The Wild Places by Robert McFarlane. Obviously it's an old book, it came out a few years ago, but it was one that I knew would move people to non-fiction reading. So a lot of our book clubbers are fiction readers. I actually came to fiction later in life. I found that I loved non-fiction, hence my degrees went that way. And it was really amazing for me personally to see a lot of fiction readers come to the light and go, wow, this book is incredible. Non-fiction nature writing is a whole venture that I didn't even know was there that I would enjoy. And it was really nice to see people take that time to slow down. It's a book about going into what is considered wild places in the UK. It's amazing how he writes. There's one scene where he writes about how he got vertigo climbing up a rock face. He didn't think he would feel that fear, and he did. And it's very humble and beautiful and really incredible writing. It was wonderful to see people engage with the book that I had chosen and really get that sense of self and explore something that they wouldn't have explored before. We always say we like to push people out of different boundaries, and yeah, it was a really nice engagement side of it for me. So yeah, I adored that one in particular.
Oh, that sounds great. And you weren't too nervous in case any of them hated it?
No, not at all, because I think that makes for a great discussion.
It does, doesn't it?
It's nice to see both sides. We talk about this a lot with books in terms of rereading books and how an initial reading I could love a book, but my second reading I leave with more questions. And as a bookseller, you've got such a finite amount of time for reading, and there's always new stuff being published, and having the time to read a book twice, that's always one of those grey areas of, do I have the time? But yes, I do, because it's a firm favourite. But then, yeah, I think the more people come, the more different opinions you get, the more different life experiences you get. So people do take things differently. And that makes for a great discussion because it opens you up to the world. As a bookseller, you're always learning. You absorb all this information from your community.
And this building that the shop is in is an ancient building. It's a 15th century building, isn't it? I believe you also have a bookshop ghost. Is that right?
We've got 3. We've got a wee lassie who decides to walk around and throw books off. We've got a poltergeist. And then we've also got a monk who, if you smell fresh flowers, it's because he's just done the flower arranging at the cathedral and has walked across through our tunnels, of which we've got 2 that connect us to the old abbey yard where they used to do beer brewing. They're all blocked off now. But yes, we've got 3 lovely resident ghosts.
I don't think there's anything a bookshop needs more than customers, perhaps, than a resident ghost. It feels such an essential component, particularly after reading books like Penelope Fitzgerald's The Bookshop, where her ghost isn't very helpful, is it? But also Louise Erdrich's The Sentence, where there's a wonderful character arc with the ghost there.
You were recently regional finalists for the Bookshop of the Year in the Nibbies, which is the British Book Industry Awards. What did that mean to you?
I mean, the awards are phenomenal. We were up against some amazing bookshops all around the country, and Griffin's books that won are incredible in their own right and deserve to win. So, yeah, it's amazing to be up with all these names that you've seen for years and think, wow, to be amongst the stars as such, what a wonderful achievement. It's incredible that we are 3.5 years in and getting recognised for our hard work. We have worked really, really hard to create a shop that's accessible for all and has something for everyone. We couldn't ask for more.
And if you weren't busy enough running the shop and the book clubs and all the things that you do here, you also last year organised a literary festival here in St Albans. One of the things I loved so much about that was that, didn't you have a crime writing session in the courthouse, in the local courthouse? Tell us more.
Yeah, we've run it for the last 2 years. It's on pause this year. It was phenomenal to see crime writers in the courthouse. I interviewed them and sat in the judge's seat, and it was very much a wonderful room to be doing that. It included Rachel Block, who's a local author, Nadine Matson, who wrote The Jigsaw Man, and Greg, who wrote The 16 Horses. But yeah, we've had Lem Sissy, we've had a range of children's authors as well. It was really nice to just see different people engaging with it as well. So all our children's events, it was wonderful to see children engaging with literary works and meeting authors for the first time. I mean, we've all got that book at home. That was our first signed book, and you treasure it. So yeah, it was something incredible, and we hope to do it again in the future.
I hope you do too, because it just sounds absolutely fantastic. So we each had a little wander around the shop and pulled some books off the shelves. I asked you if you could find for me a new book that you were excited about, a curiosity, something from your curiosities cabinet, and perhaps a backlist gem or something that we might not know about. I've also found a few of my own that fit into those categories. So let's hear about yours first. What's your new book that you found?
My new book is Femina by Gina Ramirez. I'm halfway through it and I am blown away. It's history through the female eye. Femina was its own genre of writing, so anything written by a woman was put under the category of femina. If you had a library, they would probably be the ones that would be seen as, it's okay if they get ruined because they're femina.
Is this like sort of medieval literature?
Yeah, you go through the ages. So she starts off with Emily Dickinson, the suffragette that put the penny on the king's horse and lost her life. And it's amazing to see that that's all she's really remembered for, when actually she was a scholar. She would have got a degree had women been allowed degrees in medieval literature. It was absolutely phenomenal, her level of intelligence and what she could grasp of that subject, and her interest in this area that a lot of people haven't yet looked at. Gina Ramirez, moves on from that initial aspect to go back into the archaeological record as well as the literary, to look at different histories of women going through monasteries where women were vital components in making sure that everything ran successfully. And it's just phenomenally researched, beautifully written, and I love it more so that she talks about these certain parts of the archaeological record and includes images. Now, as someone who's studied this, I end up pausing when I'm reading an old book to look at what I'm actually reading about. So she includes so many in there. You don't just have to visualize what you're thinking you're reading, you actually can see what she's discussing and the beautiful way it's written. I couldn't rave about it more.
Yes, you said most people will be familiar with her, but it falls into that category of books. It's quite a large category of books that, as I see from the cover, have been Sunday Times bestsellers, and I've never heard of them. I haven't heard of her. I haven't come across this one, but it does sound absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, I can't rave about it more. You won't be disappointed in picking that up.
And my new book is one that I'm very excited about. It's called The Scent of Flowers at Night by Leila Slïmani. It's non-fiction. It's a memoir, I think. I remember reading about it a while ago and seeing that it was due to come out. It says, over one night, alone in the Punta della Dogana Museum in Venice, Leila Slïmani grapples with the self as it is revealed in solitude. In a place of old and new, she confronts her past and her present through her life as a Moroccan woman, as a writer and as a daughter. Surrounded by art, she explores what it means to behold and clasp beauty. Enveloped by night, she confronts the meaning of life and death. Leila Slïmani writes such powerful fiction. Her book Lullaby is kind of an unforgettable read. Laura and I have been reading her trilogy, which is an incredibly powerful tale of a woman who is French and ends up going to live in Morocco and has quite a time of it. But so I'm so keen to read some non-fiction by Leila Slïmani. I kind of want to know about her and her thoughts. And this is just such a beautiful book as well. It's got an absolutely beautiful cover. So that caught my eye straight away. How about your curiosity?
Yes, so from the cabinet I pulled out, we've got a lovely Ross Poldark novel, obviously by Winston Graham.
Look at that.
It's a first edition published by Ward, Lock & Co. in 1945. It's beautiful. I mean, anyone that's a fan of Poldark will know that the stories are encapsulating everything that you love about Cornwall, that beautiful landscape that the story is set in. It's one of these stories that I feel it has so much going on about it in terms of the history, in terms of the rich literature, and it's beautiful to have such a rare first edition in our Curiosity cabinet in such good condition as well.
It's wonderful. It's inside a room looking out through a window and you're looking out onto this beautiful seascape and this very Cornish looking rocky outcrop. It's that classic thing when you come across a book like this and you think, oh, you know, the old books, they just don't make them like they used to. The old books are so great.
Yeah, they're bound so beautifully. There's so much care and attention given to them. Whenever I see a jacket on a new book, especially a hardback, I take it off because I adore what's underneath. I adore that lovely textured cloth. I adore the gold gilding with the author's name. It's beautiful, and it is amazing to see, especially with our older books, that they've survived. Someone else has cared for them. We are custodians of our collection as book lovers, so it's lovely to see that others have taken the same time and care and dedication to these incredible books.
I love the way there has been, I think, a real shift, almost like the amount of effort publishers are now putting into making books beautiful physical objects. Again, you know, that realization that if they were going to compete with the digital world, they had to make the books into something people really wanted to have as objects, which for many of us they always were, but it's just lovely. And so now you sort of have that sense again when you pick up a special book that's been made, particularly if it's an independent bookshop edition or something like that. You actually have that sense of, oh, this is just such a lovely thing to have. Makes me very happy. My curiosity was from your mixed antiquarian section. It is Queen Victoria by Lytton Strachey. Have you ever read this, do you know?
Not particularly, no, but I do love the subject matter,
yes.
yeah.
A close friend of Virginia Woolf, Lytton Strachey came to fame with Eminent Victorians, which I think was 4 famous Victorians that he wrote biographies of, and they were very shocking, perhaps, because they weren't like sort of hagiographies. They weren't celebrating the subjects in the very straightforward way that the Victorians were used to. What was very subversive about him was he told the story warts and all and was very iconoclastic, and that book made his reputation. And then this one was one that he wrote after that. I have only ever read bits of Lytton Strachey as quoted in other Bloomsbury biographies and works, and I've always meant to read him properly. So yeah, that's why this one caught my eye, and also very timely, isn't it, with our current interest in all things royal. And how about your backlist, Jem?
This one is called The Joy of Small Things by Hannah Jane Parkinson. It did come out a few months ago, but it's one that I feel that I needed at the time. Personally, I've been going through a lot in terms of family members being diagnosed with cancer, and I found that a lot of the publications being brought out were quite heavy and quite sad and quite melancholy. And I thought, no, I need something uplifting. And I recognised the name from her days when she was a journalist, and she used to take on this role. So if anyone knows J.B. Priestley, who wrote An Inspector Calls, we all loved dearly during our GCSE years at school. He wrote in the 50s a selection of essays called Delight, and they were things that brought him delight. So smoking a cigar, gin and tonic, all these things that a man in the 50s would have enjoyed. Now Hannah took that premise on, and she did her own series of essays on things that brought her joy. And it's the only book I felt in the last 6 months that's made me smile.
Oh.
And it's just beautiful. It's completely non-fiction, but it's got a range of things from seeing dogs in the park to that feeling of fresh bedding, which we all love and enjoy, getting into a bed that's been freshly made and freshly washed, to just the simplicity of life, you know, a cup of tea. It just really steadies you, brings you back to earth and makes you feel, actually, it's not all terrible out there. You could be going through the worst point of your life, but actually you've still had time to have a cup of tea with a loved one. You've still had that FaceTime with someone across the world. You've not had to write a letter that would take months and months. You know, all these different aspects of life that we take for granted, it really makes you think there's so much to life now that actually we should be joyful for. And it's not always the big gestures, it's actually the small things that can bring you that moment of pure happiness and pure joy. And I feel like it's something a lot of our community has needed lately as well. So it's been one of our bestsellers because I can't push it more. Just happiness. And I'm not going to lie, the sausage dog on the front cover did intrigue me, as I do own my own little sausage.
Oh.
But you see it on a bookcase as well, the bright yellow. It does make you feel warm and happy.
It's a very small sausage dog on the front cover, looking quite jaunty. At the back, Charlotte Mendelsohn says, the 21st century feels a lot more bearable in Parkinson's company. What a brilliant book. This sounds absolutely wonderful. I did not know about this. I'm so happy you told me about it. Thank you. My last one I picked up off your table, I think you've got an event coming up with the author Alice Vincent, who wrote a book called Rootbound, and this one is called Why Women Grow, Stories of Soil, Sisterhood and Survival. Shows the beauty and grit of tending the soil in difficult times, Catherine May. I am such an armchair gardener. I'm not really great at gardening. I do my best. We do have a garden. But I love reading books about gardening and books about growing things. And I love finding out about people who can do this, what to me seems like absolute magic. Particularly in lockdown, I found reading books about gardening and growing things became for me a real source of solace. Tell me more about this one.
It's phenomenal. I carried it around with me for a week after I read it because I just felt so moved by it. It's again one of those books you were saying about the beauty. The end papers are superb. Everyone will want that wallpaper on their downstairs loo.
Yeah,
but there's so many stories in there that cover all aspects of womanhood, from having babies to not having babies to being infertile to miscarriages to the Bloomsbury group doing their gardens for artistry and all these wonderful things that really make it a women's garden and why we grow. All these lives and all these different aspects. You know, there are women in prison, there are women living in areas where they don't have access to gardens, so they have a community garden. All these things that I think in lockdown really brought to life how not all of us do have access to a garden, not all of us have the knowledge to garden, not all of us were brought up with gardening. For myself, I adore gardening and it doesn't always go right, but when it does, it's beautiful. It really made me think who does influence our love of certain things. My love of trees came from my late grandfather. He'd just look at a tree and tell me the Latin name. I would forget it instantly, but it was lovely that I had that connection and still do. Whereas my mother was the one that would help us grow food and help us tend to plants. Nature gives you so much enrichment. And yeah, you don't always have to be doing the work in order to get that. You know, we've got lovely books like Why Women Grow. We've got Grounding that's come out recently. All these other books that you can adore for the growing side of things, but also Catherine May for the mental side of things. Her book Wintering inspired me to do wild swimming in January. Of all the months, I don't know why I chose that month, but you've got all these different aspects of nature writing that really do encompass as a whole mental health, loving yourself, taking that time in a way that I don't think fiction can always give you.
Well, the other thing I love about gardening and writing about gardening, I think, is that it's another way of thinking about time. And Books on the Hill seems to me a shop that also is a place where past and present meet, and these works of literature, the ultra new and the old, all sit side by side and create a kind of magic. It's been such a treat for me to be able to come here and be in the shop. I like to think the ghosts are quietly listening.
It's been wonderful to speak, and I hope everyone finds that book that makes them love life again. It's a treasure that we can go into these things and escape our little lives even for that moment.
That's nearly it for this episode. Books mentioned were The Wild Places by Robert McFarlane, The Bookshop by Penelope Fitzgerald, The Sentence by Louise Erdrich, Femina by Gina Ramirez, The Scent of Flowers at Night by Leila Slïmani, Ross Poldark by Winston Graham, Queen Victoria by Lytton Strachey, The Joy of Small Things by Hannah Jane Parkinson, and Why Women Grow by Alice Vincent. Since we recorded, Books on the Hill have continued to develop, adding a new non-fiction area to the shop that I can't wait to go and explore next time I'm back in town. If you can't get there in person, you can find them online at the link in the show notes. Next up for the book club review, find out what Laura's book club thought of The Years by Nobel Prize winner Annie Ernaux, and what my book club thought of Catherine Rundell's book Super Infinite, The Transformations of John Donne. We'll also be catching up on our recent reading with the help of our friend and regular guest, Phil Chafee. That episode is coming soon, but for now, thanks for listening and happy book clubbing.